The first thing they can do is they can try to invent a time machine to go back in time and not call men toxically masculine for just being a man. Maybe you don't start going, the future is female. What does that mean for people who aren't female? I am a male. If the future is female, what does my future look like? That's number two. Number three, maybe don't call people woman-hating misogynists because you guys ran a terrible candidate. What's up, world? Welcome back to Cancer Thoughts. It's your boy, Better Days here. Over the last decade or so now, the Democratic Party has been losing a lot of favor with young men, and I myself used to be a self-proclaimed leftist, and I used to have a lot of liberal beliefs, but over the 2020 lockdowns and everything, I think a lot of us were kind of forced to reevaluate some of the perspectives that we have and a lot of the values that we had, and I think a lot of young men like myself kind of came to the conclusion that the Democratic Party didn't necessarily have our best interests at heart, and very recently, I think they've been trying to grapple with the whole idea that a lot of young men feel disillusioned by their party, and a lot of young men really saw something in Trump that they don't necessarily provide on their side. So we got a report that they're going to be spending a lot of money on trying to figure out how to market to young men. So I want to show you guys that really quickly. But before we get into it, you guys already know I'm about to ask you guys to do me a solid and hit that like and subscribe button for more content. I'm trying to make sure as many people find this channel as possible, and the only way I'm going to do that is with you guys' help.
The midterms fast approaching, and a full 6 months after November's electoral drubbing, the Democratic Party appears to still be in fact-finding mode. The New York Times reports that party donors and strategists have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working-class voters. And they're spending $20 million on an effort to try to figure out how to speak to young men. Quote, "It is codenamed SAM, short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan, and promises investment to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces."
The fact that 6 months into Trump's presidency, you guys are still in fact-finding mode and you guys don't necessarily know why exactly you guys lost that election, to me shows that you guys really lack a self-awareness that I don't think can be understated at all whatsoever.
What have you guys been doing?
Secondly, that you guys are gathering in luxury hotels to try to figure out how to really connect with working class people, to me also is a blatant indication of the fact that you guys really lack self-awareness. Don't you guys think it would be a much more useful thing to use the money that you guys are spending and wasting really on these luxury hotels and just put it in the pockets of these working class people who right now are struggling economically more than probably anybody else? How can y'all not see this? But then thirdly, you guys are spending $20 million to try to figure out how to speak to young men when all you have to do is literally walk on the street and talk to young men and ask them why it is that they think a lot of young men are shifting more conservative than they are liberal, and you guys will get the exact answers.
It's that simple.
All of this is just an indication of the fact that you guys' party is in turmoil and you guys lack leadership and logic. It doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe you guys shouldn't have ran a candidate that couldn't answer basic questions, and then when people tried to point that out, maybe you guys shouldn't have called them all woman-hating misogynists or racist people. Maybe you guys should have just run a better candidate and had someone who could actually answer questions coherently instead of just trying to make people sound like they're bigots for not wanting to vote for her.
I want to bring in Megan Hayes, a former special assistant to President Biden, and Basil Smikle is back with me. You're both smiling. Donors and strategists, Megan, have been gathering at luxury hotels to discuss how to win back working class voters. The Times says these news projects can read like anthropological studies of people from faraway places. What do you see in here?
Well, it's great that we're being a little bit more introspective. That's always helpful. But I think that the Democrats have forgot that maybe we should just talk to people like people. We don't need to do studies on it. We don't need to meet at hotels. How about we just go to community meetings and meet people where they are on social media and their different forms and platforms that they are. But I think that the Democrats have forgot how to talk to normal people about things that are really important to them, like the economy. So it's I think, a really good lesson to learn, but I also think we just need to get back to basics.
Yeah.
And I agree with her on most of what she said there. The only disagreement I would have is the whole idea that there's some level of introspection. I don't think they're being introspective whatsoever. If they were being introspective, the first thing they would do is go, guys, we messed up. We maybe shouldn't have been calling men toxically masculine over the last decade. Maybe we shouldn't have been promoting the future as female over the last decade. If they were actually being accountable, they would have mentioned all of that. Instead, they're doing things like spending $20 million on on trying to figure out the syntax and what goes viral in these communities. It is a philosophical, fundamental principles issue in the Democratic Party.
I think, Basil, another very informative little phrase, and you're the academic here, but when you're trying to figure out the syntax, language, and content, are you getting ahead?
Yeah, no, you're not. This is not, I really have no understanding what that is, because honestly, if somebody needed to come talk to me, just come talk to me. Actually, go find me and come and talk to me. Don't do it in a hotel. Don't study me like this is some academic exercise. That is exactly why we're not winning, because because Democrats have been accused of looking and sounding too elitist. That's a problem. And the look, the reality is.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. You know what strikes me? Yeah. Because if you talk to some of these folks, and I can just tell you anecdotally, but obviously there are lots of people doing focus groups on this, that these folks don't like Donald Trump. They don't want to vote for Donald Trump, and most of them won't vote for Donald Trump. But they don't have a darn good thing to say about the other side.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? When don't you start out ahead if they really dislike the other guys?
100% you start ahead if they really dislike the other guy. And that's what a lot of people tried to accuse a lot of the people who did end up voting for Trump of being, is that you guys are just misogynists and you guys just hate women and all this nonsense. And it's like, no, a lot of people don't like Trump. This isn't a Trump thing. They just don't like what they're seeing on the other side either, especially when you guys are talking about men can be women and vice versa and all that nonsense, and the whole idea that people aren't actually feeling economically the way they're feeling, and the studies actually show that the economy is actually better than it is. It seems like there's just this Ivy League pretentiousness that's emanating from the Democratic Party that makes you feel like, what the hell are you guys talking about? You guys are going to study people. Why don't you just go on the ground and go actually talk directly to people, and they will tell you exactly what their problem is with your party, and you guys can choose to either do it or don't do it. But don't sit there and act like people are some exotic species that need to be studied under a petri dish. It makes no sense.
Well, here's a good example. There's been a lot of conversation about what people knew about Joe Biden and when did they know it. To Megan's point, if you actually go into communities and talk to voters, they're not asking about Joe Biden. They're asking, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And if if Democrats don't have an answer for that question, they're going to continue to lose support. Find answers, go into communities, actually amplify what neighborhood organizations, we talked in the last segment about violence disruptors. Talk to those folks because they're in these streets. There are really good examples of how people have taught each other, ministered to each other, clothed and fed each other, because particularly in the African-American community, we've always done that. So amplify those stories. But instead, we're held up at hotels talking to each other.
I actually disagree a little bit with what he said there. People are a little bit preoccupied with who knew what, especially about Joe Biden, because for a lot of the last, I would say 5 years or so, a lot of people saw that Joe Biden was mentally declining, and people tried to point that out. And what did the Democratic Party do? They just tried to gaslight people into going, oh no, he's actually strong as an ox and he's sharp as a tack. And everybody saw that that wasn't necessarily the case. And to me, that's just an indication of the inauthenticity that exists in the Democratic Party. And if you guys aren't willing to grapple with that, then a lot of people are just going to look at you guys like fake. At the very least, they're going to see Trump and go, that's actually who Trump actually is. That's not what we see on the left. The left just tries to make it seem like they're these wonderful people who never make any mistakes, and they have this holier than thou mentality of we know better and we're just these really ultra ethical people, and if you don't agree with us, you're not ethical as well. It's just like, yo, people understand that you guys are unethical because you guys covered up Joe Biden's mental decline for the last 4 years.
Megan, the Times also writes that Democrats have led, indeed, focus groups where voters are asked to name an animal that best describes the Democratic Party. One man said, a deer in headlights. You stand there and you see the car coming, but you're going to stand there and get hit with it anyway. Changing perception, obviously, it's not a 1 month thing. It's not even a 1 year job. But what can Democrats do? Because the midterms will be here before they know it.
The first thing they can do is they can try to invent a time machine to go back in time and not call men toxically masculine for just being a man. Maybe you don't start going, the future is female. What does that mean for people who aren't female? I am a male. If the future is female, what does my future look like? That's number 2. Number 3, maybe don't call people woman-hating misogynists because you guys ran a terrible candidate. Maybe don't gaslight people. Maybe just meet them exactly where they are instead of finger wagging and telling them that you know better for them.
Right. I mean, the Democrats didn't get into this place of one election cycle. It wasn't just 2024. This has been going on for many years. So I think it's going to take the Democrats time, but I do think that that Congress was very aligned on their messaging with the bill that was passed in the House. And I think that they are very aligned and they're out there and talking to their communities and their constituents. And I think they need to be aligned on that and continue to stay aligned on. They care about the economy. They care about keeping 14 million people with their health insurance, and the 18 million kids keep getting food. And I think that those are the things that the Democrats are aligned on. I think they need to continue to stay aligned on what's important to the American people and what's important to the moderates. And that is the economy. It's the cost of housing, the cost of education, the cost of groceries. Those are the things that impact everyday people. And, you know, you're totally right. No one is talking about Joe Biden and who knew what when. They're talking about how much it is to pay for groceries and how they're going to get their kids to school every day. So it's just, we need to be more aligned with where people are who are actually voting and not what the DC bubble is.
Stop talking about men can be women. Stop talking about pronouns. Stop talking about all of this nonsense that 80 something or 90 something percent of the population doesn't give a damn about whatsoever. Maybe just start talking about why the cost of eggs is going higher and higher, why the cost of housing is literally gone parabolic over the last 5 years or so. Maybe start talking about why everyday people feel like they can't afford the normal things that they need to survive. And maybe you guys will start actually making some headway. Okay, that's the end of the video there then. I'm just going to leave on this final thought, guys. There's nothing wrong with men wanting to provide for themselves, provide for their families. There's nothing wrong with young men wanting to sleep with attractive girls and wanting to be stern in their beliefs and their perspectives. There's nothing wrong with young men wanting to stand up for themselves whatsoever. There is nothing wrong with that. And I think what Trump really tapped into was men's innate desire to want to exhibit all of those, let's call it, principles. And the Democratic Party just doesn't necessarily do that. The Democratic Party just wants young men to sit down, let the women do all the thinking, let the women do all the doing, and they want to pretty much shame men into acting how they want men to act. And that's not how you're going to get a lot of support from men. I'm going to leave it there, guys. I don't necessarily want to be repetitive or whatever. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about this entire video, and let me know if you guys are starting to notice the Democratic Party actually shift, or do you guys think this is just lip service? As always, I want to thank you guys for joining me on this video. You guys could have been anywhere else in the world, but you chose to be here with me, and I really do appreciate you. If you liked what you heard today, do me a solid and like the video, share the video, and subscribe if you haven't already. Those things really do help out the channel a lot, guys. And if you didn't like what you heard, thanks for allowing me to occupy your time. Consider leaving a comment in the comments down below, letting me know exactly what it was that you disagreed with, and maybe we could talk about it. Either way, I appreciate each and every one of you guys for pressing play on this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.